Imagine you woke up and you found an envelope and you opened it, and in that envelope were 2 more envelopes and some instructions. And the instructions say you can open one of these 2 envelopes, the other one will self-destruct. One of them contains a true fact about the past, and the other one contains a true fact about the future. So the question is, which one, if any, would you open and why? I'm Bonny, and I run a few different communities. The main one is thought experiments in pubs.
So this whole thing indirectly started via dance. So let's start with how you got into that.
I went to a Scottish reeling event when I was at university, and I loved it. It was such an overwhelming environment of music and lots of people dancing, and especially the feeling of dancing with a partner but surrounded by other people dancing in partners. But I just really liked the energy, almost like this is such a natural human thing. It feels like a frenzy and it feels really good for you. So that was what I wanted to find more of. When I left university, I wanted to do more of that, but it didn't seem like part of the mainstream culture. Most dancing seemed to be like clubbing, and I wasn't so into that. And so I looked up social dancing, and of all the different options, salsa seemed to be the most prevalent. So I went to a salsa class and I loved the music, and it kind of just evolved from there.
So tell me a little more about what it is you love about dance.
I think that the main feeling I get out of dancing is feeling very uplifted and very full of life. I think of salsa as like the colour red in my life. So I feel like until I learned salsa, my life had a lot of blue in it, which was nice. Like, it wasn't necessarily sad blue, but it was quite calm and thoughtful and procedural. And then I learned to do salsa, and it was just like so much energy. When I leave salsa, my face hurts because I've been smiling the whole way through. And so yeah, it's like an uplifting, energizing thing, which probably comes from the movement, the music, and the people all together.
And then there was something that you found in dance that you wanted to be able to bring to non-dancers.
I think the main thing is the ability to go out to a thing and not have to coordinate with anyone else, and know that you'll see people that you know, but also that you'll meet new people. And in a big city like London, that feels like such a luxury and very life enhancing to be part of that kind of network, I guess. Like when I used to go out a lot for salsa, see the same people for years and not know much at all about their lives, but there's something very reassuring about knowing that they'd be there, and them recognizing me and knowing that for instance, if I'd been away for a few weeks, I would be noticed that I'd been away for a few weeks, and people recognize you and smile at you. And I think that's really important as a human and special, and doesn't happen that often in a big anonymous city.
So dance then led indirectly to thought experiments. For anyone who's not familiar with the concept, how would you describe a thought experiment?
The most famous thought experiment that I can think of is the trolley problem, which is when you have a train that is going to crash and everyone on the train is going to die or be injured, and you have the power to pull a lever which would divert that train down another track. However, on that track there is someone tied to the tracks. So the question is, do you pull the lever or not? Saving lots of people but killing one person with a deliberate action. And then you can vary that scenario by saying, what if all the people on the train were very old in their 90s, and what if the person on the track was a child, or all different permutations. But it's a what if, and what would you do, and what are the ethical considerations.
If you'd asked me to guess where thought experiments in pubs came from, I certainly wouldn't have guessed Pentonville Prison.
I used to work in mental health settings and services alongside mental health. I met up with someone who was teaching philosophy in the education department of the prison, and I said, I really want to do this, but I'm finding it hard. And he said, just use thought experiments. And I was like, what do you mean? And he recommended a book of thought experiments, which are the more classic ones. So I just brought that in, and they were such good conversations. because people had such different life experiences, they really brought these quite dry academic thought experiments to life in a different way. It made me really appreciate just sort of discussion, not in a academic setting, but discussion in a like life experience setting. And a lot of the conversations were so quite emotional because they were about things like freedom or responsibility, guilt, free will, and in that setting it was very alive topics.
Then the other half of the TEiP origin story is sunrises.
So between working in Pentonville and setting up thought experiments in pubs, I set up another meetup group called the Sunrise Club, which was a result of going for lots of early morning runs and seeing incredible sunrises and wishing that more people could see them. It was amazing how few people, well, maybe not amazing for people who get up at a normal hour, but there was no one there, and it was these incredible sunrises. And so I thought I'd set up a meetup group and see if anyone wanted to join me. We meet up just before sunrise, watch the sunrise, and then go and have coffee. But it was this alchemy of early morning light and freezing cold dawns and coffee that I think led to having really great deep conversations with strangers and reminded me of that group in Pentonville and made me want to set up thought experiments in pubs.
So why pubs in particular?
I think I thought about using pubs just because I like the idea of the pub as a public space, a public living room or public house, I think is where the term pub comes from. So I wanted to have that feeling of anyone can come and it be relaxed and chilled. So I thought experiments in pubs, I'll just put it on there and see what happens. And I expected like less than 10 people to come because my other meetup attempts had usually been less than 10. They had usually been outside and in the rain, so it's not that surprising. But the first thought experiments in pubs, I was stunned because in the weeks leading up to it, the numbers of people saying they wanted to come just kept going up. And I think it was over 100 signed up for the first event.
So why do you think it's proven so popular? What is it that people get out of TEiP?
It's friendly, like it's in a pub. It's the way I describe it is everyone is welcome, and more than just everyone is welcome, like the group will be better the more different people come. So please come because you will be valued. And then I think when they're there, people get to hear how other people think, and they also get to hear how they think, because sometimes they're presented with a question that they've never thought about, and so they'll think about it, say what they think, and then they're like, oh, I think that. At least that's what happens to me. I sometimes don't realize until I've said it out loud, oh, I actually have a view on that. And then I'll get to hear other people's views, and I leave with so much more in my mind than I arrived with. So I think the people who come back, it's that feeling. It was quite moving that so many people wanted to enter this, what I describe as this open-minded space, and listen to each other and share their thoughts. It felt like, wow, people I really want to do this.
And you've talked a bit about this already, but tell me a little bit more about what you personally get out of TEiP.
Its curiosity is like one of the main things. There's a real curious side, which is ideas, more questions. And then there's another side, which is, wow, I've never looked at it like that before, and now I've heard that, I'm always going to look at it differently. So I think of it as like widening the lens. From my particular lens, I suddenly get to hear so-and-so's lens and someone else's, and so it widens my lens. And that feels like that I couldn't do that by myself. That's where the community is really, like, the privilege is to be able to tap into that. It's just given me the chance to meet a lot more people from all different walks of life. It's not one age group or one gender or one background in terms of any respect. It's people from all over the world, all different stages of their life. From, I think, the youngest person who's come is 16 and wants to study philosophy at university, and the oldest is in their late 80s. It's been remarkably diverse, and as a result I've got to have conversations that I never would have otherwise, and meet people and make friends and find new people to collaborate with. And so I feel so lucky. Then there's a whole other side for me, which is the creative challenge of coming up with thought experiments.
Yeah, so there are other meetup groups that work with the classic thought experiments drawn from philosophy, but you create your own.
So I did use the classical thought experiments for the first year that I was doing thought experiments in pubs. And then I kind of ran out of the classic ones, but I also started thinking about other scenarios as if they were thought experiments. I've really loosened it to be any kind of wondering about a scenario, and that really brought to life a lot of things for me. It made me want to start reading more books and watching different films and even like poetry and just situations in my own life or anecdotes friends had told me. Suddenly these all became potential thought experiments, potential ways of getting into deep questions from relatable scenarios. So I guess, it's become a really fun, creative thing for me.
And what about the times when inspiration doesn't strike in that way and you've got a meetup scheduled, you've got a deadline? What do you do then?
I think of a theme that I want to think about. So, for example, I have 2 episodes coming up. One is on the unknown and the other is on the known. And so I'm thinking a lot about these themes of known and unknown. And then it becomes a lens through which I look at the world and filter conversations. So someone might say, it's really scary when you don't know what's going to happen. There's a lot of uncertainty. And then I'll add that to my mind map of things associated with the unknown. And then I could also just generate ideas like the unknown of the future, or parts of history that are unknown, or which stories are told and which aren't. So basically the theme then becomes a filter through everything I'm reading, everything I'm watching, and I jot it all down. A few things will stand out, a few themes within that, and then I'll try and write thought experiments based on that. And then they'll raise different questions, so that then might alter it. Yeah, it's kind of a evolving process right up until the deadline of the event, and then I have to finish it and release it to the world.
And finally, you've got this third meetup group called The Hearth for people who want to create and grow communities.
I think there's something about gathering with a group of people in person regularly, whether it's dancing or thought experiments or a peer support group, that is very good for human beings. I think it's not a coincidence that people deal with some of the most difficult things in life by meeting in groups. For example, addiction, 12-step recovery, and peer support groups for other crisis type scenarios. So I set up this new group because I want to share the experience of creating a community and nurturing a community, because it's really been such a wonderful thing in my life. And I think there are so many different ways people can gather, but there are a few things I've learned, I guess, along the way, both before thought experiments in pubs and since, that I think can help. But the aim really is just to have more and more opportunities for people to gather in person and benefit from each other's company and experience. So my hope is that I create this little group of people who want to create their own groups, and then they all create their own groups, and then we just have lots more opportunities for people to meet each other.